Hi everyone, my name is Cora. I've been cross-stitching for 2 years and I have some knowledge I want to share with you of things that I wish I would have known when I first started cross-stitching, things I've learned throughout the 2 years that I've been stitching, some of my favorite things and some of my favorite shops and places to look for patterns. So basically, when I first started cross-stitching, I had family members who were doing them. Absolutely loved them. I thought their work was beautiful, but it seemed to require a lot of patience and a lot of precision, those are not two of my skills. So I always thought it was never something I'd be able to do. Fortunately for me and my craziness of wanting to learn new things, I decided to just give it a try. I bought a little kit and I started. Did so many things wrong, but I learned in the last 2 years and I thought I'd share my knowledge with you. So when I first started, I wasn't really sure what I was doing. I stitched a little bit holding my fabric in hand. So I would kind of take my fabric and just stitch like this and go top and bottom out at the same time. And then I would do in, pull out, and then out, and I wasn't sure if it made a difference. I then later learned that it did. So consistency is one of the things that I learned to be the #1 tool. It doesn't matter if you decide to stitch in hand, pull out to do kind of the sewing method, do the all the way out method, whatever you decide just for one piece, stick to the same thing, you'll get the nice even results. My first few projects kind of have a few stitches that are bumpier than the other. I'm trying to learn the consistency. Some of my favorite accessories that I've learned to love or learned to need with my 2 years of experience were this. I use this to frog, which is removing your stitches. So it's a really thick needle. It's a lot thicker than the needle that you use to cross stitch. I'll show you by comparison. So this one doesn't break, doesn't bend, and it's one that you can use over and over. I keep mine, I have a lamp post that has my light that I stitch with. It's magnetic, so I stick my needle minder on there and I stick that there and it hangs. Amanda's also made this really nice one that I got in a mystery box, which I absolutely love. The color of this flower is just so flashy, but it's very pointy as opposed to the dull cross-stitch needle, and it really makes it easier to pull out your stitches when you have to frog. Scissor fobs, definitely my new favorite favorite need. I kept losing my scissors, and so I had our friend Kelly, I will link her Etsy shop, she created this one for me. She's also the one that created this one, so I have a matching scissor fob and thread puller outer is what I call it. And I also asked for this little protector. So I have kids, so I thought this was great. If they grab my scissors now, I'm a lot less worried that they're gonna jab themselves. Contrary to the needle, embroidery scissors are very pointy. That's also something I didn't realize when I first started. I was just using any type of scissors that I found. It would fray all of my thread and I would end up throwing out quite a bit. But with these, there's a lot of precision in them. So my cut is always nice and neat and I can start off with it right away. The other thing that I found, which I thought was really cool, is the floss drop. And so you take your floss one color at a time and you put it through here and it'll hang. And then you pick it up as you want to work on. My preferred method of work is actually with one of these bobbins here. I roll them all and I put the number in the top right corner. That way I know all my numbers. That's definitely something that I prefer doing. You'll learn as you go along that not everyone does everything the same way. Someone might absolutely love something and you try it and you really don't like it. That's totally okay. I have friends who swear by this floss drop And for me, it's just not viable. I have children. I leave my cross-stitching stuff out. And they're really young kids. I wouldn't want them pulling out my thread and starting to play with it. So for me, I started organizing in these boxes per project. So I have them all in numerical order. And I have one project at a time. I label it with some good old masking tape. And then I have my project and my thread all together. And these go everywhere I go when I need to work on them. The other thing that was probably one of my biggest fears was I will never be able to do a big project. I am someone who needs instant gratification, and I like little tiny projects that don't take that long. This is about 450 stitches, if you're wondering. When I first started, 450 stitches seemed like eternity. I can now pump this out in half a day. So as you get used to it, as you get the beat of it, you will get faster. Some people are just slow stitchers, and that's totally fine. Just know what your rhythm is when you're taking on a project. Because if you're looking at this versus this versus this, you're not looking at the same time frame. So make sure that you go with what you think you're capable of doing. So at first I started doing smaller projects. I was doing words. I was doing anything that wasn't very big because I didn't think I could do it. I decided at the same time that I would start 3 giant stitch-alongs. One of them was the Let's Play a Game, which was actually a Stitchy exclusive. I had seen it go. I've been part of the free Facebook group for over a year, and I had been lurking and seeing patterns coming through. And when I saw that one, my husband's a big gamer. I was like, I need to make this for him. And when I saw it was a Stitchy exclusive, wasn't even an argument as to whether or not I was going to join. I really needed that pattern. So that was one of the first ones. My other one was this movie stitch along. So there's different 80s movies. I thought would make a really nice decoration for my basement. And as you can see, it's really big. Never thought I'd be able to do things like that. But honestly, I take it one square at a time. I worked a little bit on this one, got tired of seeing this one, moved on to the next one. So it was the same thing with this 90s one. It's all little boxes, and I think of it, each little section as one finish. I finished this, now I work on something else if I don't want to work on this. I had only one project on the go at a time, but I found I was getting bored, and I realized that for me, my solution is have more patterns on the go. Not too many that it's overwhelming, but have a few that one day I can sit and work on this, and then in the same day work on this one. So I'm getting a little bit of a move on each, so I'm seeing some improvement without getting super annoyed. So that was my biggest one for me when working on big projects. I was seeing people work on projects for years, and I thought, no way I can do that. And quite often, people who work on big projects that take years don't only work on that project. So that's a little bit of a secret. When I was rolling my my floss, which comes like this, I decided to go cheap when I first started. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, wasn't sure if that was something I'd be continuing with. So I went with the paper bobbins. They're not very good. They bend, they fold, you can move them. When I first started, they were great though, because I was using them not very often. I was pulling them out. I'd take one piece of floss out. It would be good for a week. So eventually, when I started doing the 400, 500, 600 stitches a day, these were getting a lot more use. And because of that, the cardboard was kind of disintegrating. So any new ones that I roll up, I use these plastic ones. Same thing, same size, but much sturdier. I can write on here with permanent marker, which is what I didn't want to do in the beginning. I had purchased these because I could write in pen, but I bought these, and I also have some that have stickers. The stickers are really fun. They just make everything look nice and neat. I'm going to try to get it in focus so you can see. So it looks a lot neater than my super nice handwriting. But that, again, is my preference. It depends what you want it to look like in your kit, or if it doesn't matter to you. So those are some of the things that I wish I had known before I started. I invested money in things that I could have probably invested a little bit more at the time, and had the value of it, but because I wasn't sure if I was going to stick to it, if I was going to like it as much as I do now, those are some of the things that I would have definitely gone with. I would have asked a lot earlier about the size. People were talking about 14, 18, 28. I did not understand what they were talking about. I just assumed it was inches at first. So I was really confused. My local craft store was selling loops and thread. We have a Michaels. And then I was buying DMC. There's Wigwarts. I can't even say it. But they're like the top quality fabric. I didn't think the fabric made a difference. It does. I don't buy top of the line. I'm not saying you have to spend like $1 million on fabric. But depending on what your fabric is, if you're going on the cheaper end, sometimes the holes don't align. Some holes are bigger than others. So that becomes a problem when you're trying to stitch, because you really want your stitching to be really even. So because in this one, the stitching was even because the holes were even. You can see that by measuring. So if you're not sure, you can take a ruler, and this is also how you figure out the count of fabric. You can measure out an inch and see how many. I was taught to always measure at least over 2 inches, because something might be straight for an inch, but the consistency won't keep going in 2. So having by 2, you count, and then you just divide by 2, and it'll tell you how many holes per inch, and the amount of holes is the count. So this one is 14 count. A lot of times beginner patterns will be on 14 count. You can always put your pattern on 14 count if you're a beginner. If you see it's on 18, it doesn't matter. If you see it's on 16 or 32, it doesn't matter. The only time it matters is if you're making, well, it'll be the size. So if there's 18 holes per, so this one is a 16. So if I made this on 14, the design would be a little bit bigger. And then if I made it on 11, it would be even bigger. But if I made it on 32, it would be half this size. So that's only something to keep in mind. Let's say you want to make a pillow, you're doing it on 14 count, and the pattern was normally 18, and the 18 count pattern was 12 by 12 inches. Well, then your 14 count will be a little bit bigger. So depending on what you're looking for sizing of your project. Like for me, this one's going to be a little accessory that I'm going to hang in the Christmas tree. It doesn't really matter what size it is. This one as well is going to go in a frame. This one is where the consistency comes in. I have this princess and this one. There's a little bit of a princess obsession in this house. So I wanted all of these to match. So if I would have used 14 count for one and 16 count for another, my princesses wouldn't be the same size. So these are all done on 14 count. And I've cut out the fabric so that they all fit on in an 8 by 10. Because this one, as you can see, Elsa is a little bit skinnier than the Ariel, because Ariel has the bigger dress. So I made sure to have enough fabric extra on Elsa to make sure it fit in my 8 by 10 frame. Because normally when you take your pattern and you try to figure out how much fabric you're going to need, you add extra inches for your framing. But as you can see, this one is definitely not as wide. So I would have probably not added so much excess fabric on the side. So knowing what you're going to do with your pattern at the end is also very important, so that you're not running out of fabric when you're trying to frame, or when you're trying to make your pillow, or when you're trying to do whatever with your finished product. A lot of times you'll hear in different groups, free groups, oh, that's the wrong way. There's no wrong way. There's different ways. Back in the day, this is what I was told. There was a wrong way of cross stitching. Everyone was taught the same way. Everyone was doing it the same way. And that's just how people were doing it. And so if you encounter older stitchers, sometimes if you start from left to right, they're going to say, no, 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 you have to start left to right. And that's just how they've done it. But if you start right to left or left to right, the only important thing to remember is that it's always, always consistent. So your floss that goes like this is always, always like this under the bottom, and this one is always on the top, or vice versa. It doesn't matter as long as it's always the same. So whatever one ends up being on top is always going in the same direction. That's one thing I didn't know. So my first piece has a lot of spotty, you can see the fabric through. It also didn't help that it was white on black, but I've learned, and now I know that I need to really do that. It does provide a lot more coverage because everything is going the same way, so everything fills itself out. So that's definitely something to remember. My other new favorite thing, which I've only started using in the last few months, is Q-snaps. These have saved my life. I dreaded starting a project because trying to put it in this stinking hoop and getting the tension, I like things when they're really tight, and the tension was never the same. I had a hard time. Sometimes it would get loose. I wasn't really a fan, and when I was holding my hoop like this, my hand is very well closed. It was causing me a lot of issues when I was stitching for a long time. My hands would get cramped up. So I can imagine anyone who has joint issues or pain issues, arthritis, anything like that, the hoops are a little bit harder to hold, especially if you're using a hoop on a big project, because you can see all the extra fabric that would be hanging on, which would be kind of weighing it down. The Q-snap, I'll show you how this works. Someone showed me and I honestly thought it was magic. So I'm gonna take it apart, you just pull on the little guard here. So these look like PVC pipes. You can buy them in a variety of sizes. My new favorite one for my big projects is 11 by 17, which I would have never ever guessed. This one's an 8 by 8. So it comes like this, and you have these little clips that'll go on top. So all you have to do is put your fabric, and then you have to decide where you want to go. So if I want to stitch more into this corner, it's a little bit harder to do kind of up in the air, but like this, you clip on the first one. Then you go to the bottom. It doesn't really matter if your pattern isn't straight on here, you're always going by the needle holes. So sometimes if it looks off or you're not sure, take it out of your Q-snap, your hoop, and you'll see that it'll be straight. And then I just pull the fabric. I don't pull very tight, and I just clip them on like that. This to me is like the dream of how to set up a project, because now you're ready to go. Your tension is good. If you find that it needs to be a little tighter, you can actually twist it. Or if you need to be looser, you twist it, and it'll tighten or loosen your project. So this to me was like a game changer. I thought it was so much easier. I also wanted to test out one of these Nerge, which was also, everyone was talking about them. I needed to get one. It's kind of like a hoop, so it does have the thinness. However, when you pop it out, I'll show you on the inside here, there's actually a little ledge. So when you're putting it into the inside piece, there's actually a divot here. There's like a little crack. See how my finger can go in there? So this goes into that, and then your fabric doesn't move. So I've had the rare time when my fabric was a little bit loose, when I'd been stitching on it for a long time. But honestly, you take this part, you put your fabric where you want it, you put the top part, clip. Sometimes I have to pull a tiny bit, and then you screw, and that's it. So this one is really good as well. The disadvantage I find to this one, only for personal, is still the thinness. But it works really great in one of my stands that I have. So when I'm turning, it tightens. Again, good to go, super easy. I didn't have to fix any of the tension. I'll put it this way so you can see. There's no drooping under of the fabric. If I do this, it's super tight. So which is how I like working. Some people prefer working in hand because it is softer and they feel like they have more control. That was just my preference. So I use my Q-snaps big and small. I do prefer them for the big. So my 90s is on the 11 by 17. So it's really big. But I did learn to stitch two-handed, which is actually quite interesting and something I wasn't sure I'd be able to master. But I will show you. I'm just rolling up my fabric on this one and putting the little ties. My ties are just not cooperating with me today. But, so now that I have my fabric like this tied up, I actually hold it under my arm like this, and then I take my needle and I poke it through, I pull it out, I put it back, I pull it out, and I kind of teeter-totter like that. I find this a lot faster and more efficient for me, and with this big frame, it's a lot easier to do. I still use it, I still do the same thing with this frame, but I find I don't really have anywhere to hold it, so I kind of push it through and then push it through and then push it through, but it's having to move my hands a lot more than this one that I can rest on my thigh or that I can tuck under my arm and stitch like that. So I find it kind of does the same thing as the stand without having to take all the extra room in my living room because, as I mentioned, I have littles and they like to touch and see what mom's working on. So having a stand constantly present in my stitchy space isn't something that's doable for me. So that's what I struggled with when I first started. Everyone had these really nice setups and I was like, I can't do that because I have kids and they take up all the space in the house. But then I learned from different people. Some people live in RVs and they stitch and they have a small spot. And some people don't even have a spot. Like I was stitching on my couch, then I'd stitch in my bed, then I'd stitch at the kitchen table. So everything had to be portable. So whatever your reality is, there is a way to find whatever works for you. Sometimes for storage or for Q-snaps. I use them differently than someone else. Other people use these and they swear by them inside of a stand and that's it. So I found that this works best for me. You might find that these are way too big. My friend Chloe in Australia is the one that got me onto these. You can check her out on YouTube, Miss Chloe. And I was like, that's way too big. What do you need that for? But when your pattern just doesn't fit because it's 12 inches and the Q-snaps are made 11 by 11, this is perfect. You see your whole pattern side to side, and then you're able to start, especially if you're doing something where it's like this and you're going all the way around, you don't want to have to move halfway and then start the next color that goes under and then move it again. So this is perfect for that. But she often hears, that's way too big. I can't believe you're using that. I've honestly fallen in love with them. I now own 3 of them. Stitch-alongs are also great. If you're someone who's a serial starter, which is someone who's always starting new projects, and who gets bored very easily, stitch-alongs are great. Join a whole bunch of them. I have this one, the 90s vibe. I have this one from Frosted Pumpkins, this one is a yearly. I have this one that was done. I have this one that I started. I was keeping up and then I lost track because I was working on other things. They always have just one little part come out at a time. You work on that part, you don't get tired of your project, you put it aside, then you start something else. So those are great, and you try to keep up with them, so then eventually you have a whole bunch started and then you just rotate through them throughout the month depending when the release dates are. Some of them have release dates every couple days, some of them every couple weeks, some of them every month, some of them are every year you get one part and then you have all year to work on it, and then the next year you get a different one. So those are all different varieties of stitch-alongs that I've discovered throughout my 2 years. I still like doing these little ones. Sometimes I just make them like this one. Hippos are my favorite. I made it because I thought it was really cute. This is a Christine Shannon design. I love her stuff. She's actually out of BC, so I like to support my fellow Canadians. But I absolutely love it. I stitched it last Christmas. Couldn't really tell you what I'm going to do with it. It's a little bit too big to be an ornament, but this was stitched on 14. Had I stitched it on 18, I could have probably made it into an ornament because it would have been a little bit smaller. But whatever you do with it, stick it in a hoop, use it to decorate. Put it in a frame, make a pillow. There's so many different choices. Look at any of the groups. You can even Google just finished cross-stitch projects. There's tons of videos, tons of tutorials on how to do that. Better yet, join a community. I love being a Stitchy. I've met so many great friends. Amanda, who runs the Stitchy group, is amazing. She's super nice, always open, comes out with the best patterns. That's how she got me hooked. It was with the Let's Play game Sal. It had so many characters from the games that my husband played as a child. It was full of nostalgia, so I can't wait to hang that one in our basement. Now I'm making one for me, so it's the 90s vibes. So being a 90s baby, almost 90s baby, I love all the 90s stuff, so I was really excited when she released this one, and as it progresses, I'll be sharing it on my Instagram, so if you want to check that out at Crafting with Cora, I'll be posting pictures of my updates on there. So thanks so much for watching my video. If you have any questions or comments, please put them under. I'd be happy to answer them for you, and I know Amanda would as well. We're always looking for other cross-stitch lovers to join our Stitchy collective. Registrations are open in March and September, so definitely get in on that. There's so many amazing patterns coming through that are still going to be running in September, so you'll have access to those once you've joined. So make sure to check that out, and thanks again for watching my video.